Okay, you're live now.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Town of Eastchester Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for January 2021. It is Tuesday, January 12th, 2021, and we're calling the meeting to order. And as has been since we began our remote Zoom meetings, some of the items that are part of the ordinary meeting are dispensed with, like the Pledge of Allegiance and a roll call for obvious reasons. So as far as roll call is concerned, we have 7 items on tonight. There are 3 items on for resolution, which will be decided. There's 1 item of old business and 3 items of new business. We observe Robert's Rules of Parliamentary Order. And for those items that are on for old and new business, the applicant, as a general rule, will be making their presentation. For the new business items, applicants don't need to sit here and read their application and the 5-part test or the interpretation arguments, because those matters are part of the public record and they've been submitted. You can, if you'd like, it doesn't hurt or help your application. And then there's generally an opportunity for the public to be heard. So the applicant, again, and board members will speak firstly, then we'll open on motion to the public for a public hearing. If you'd like to make a comment, you're going to use the raise hand feature on Zoom or *9 if you're calling from a phone. Our Deputy Town Attorney, Robert Tedisco, will acknowledge you and invite you to speak. Please unmute your microphone and state your name and address for the record. Okay, so before we get into the main calendar, I just want to firstly make a motion to approve the minutes of the October 13, 2020 and November 10, 2020 ZBA meetings. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. On to the first part of our calendar, the 3 items for resolution. Item number 1, I make a motion to approve application 20-35, that's 56 Brombach Avenue. Is there a second to my motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cahalan. To the vote. Mr. Cahalan?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Nerzia?
Yes.
Mr. DeMarco?
Yes.
I vote yes. The application's been approved 5-0. Item number 2, I make a motion to approve application 20-38, 5 Howell Place. Is there a second to my motion?
Second.
Mr. DeMarco. To the vote. Mr. Cahalan?
No.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Nerzia?
Yes.
Mr. DeMarco?
Yes.
I vote yes. The application's been approved 4-1. The last item on for resolution is item number 3. And I make a motion to approve application 19-42, 5 Ray Place. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. DeMarco. To the vote. Mr. Cahalan?
No.
Mr. Miller?
No.
Mr. Nerzia?
Yes.
Mr. DeMarco?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The application's been approved 3-2. Next item, item number 4, under the category of old business. This is 20-37 Immaculate Conception Church and Arch Care. And just as a note before the applicant proceeds, that this matter was not open to the public for a public hearing because there was some supplemental supplemental items, for the presentation. So the public hearing has not been opened on this. Okay, we're ready to proceed.
Okay, I'm kind of getting everyone on board here. I think that's everybody.
Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. My name is Michael Zarin and Steinmetz. I'm joined tonight by Father Sorgi, William Schneider, engineer, Sakiyakis, the architect, and Eric Feldman, member of the applicant's board, or one of the applicants. As you recall, this is a application, joint application of Arch Care, an arm of the Archdiocese, the healthcare services, and the Parish of Immaculate Conception and Assumption of Our Lady, in connection with their joint application seeking special permit approval to rehabilitate and convert the parish's former convent building to provide 10 residential units for high-functioning individuals with autism to be known as Archcare's St. Francis Cabrini Apartments at Immaculate Conception Church. I know we were before you at your prior meeting of November 10th, 2020, and I just thought I would very, very briefly just go over the proposal in case there's anyone here tonight to speak at the public hearing that might not have heard the previous description. The convent takes up approximately the area of 1.98 acres of the 11.65 acre campus of the parish. Previously, 28 nuns resided in this building. It has been vacant since 2012 and is in need of internal renovation and rehabilitation. This is an attempt to repurpose this building for very important need in the community. Residential homes for high-functioning individuals with autism over the age of 21. This is a growing need for adults with autism, and in this community, in fact, probably the majority of the families who will have family members in this building come from the parish. Archcare, again, an arm of the Archdiocese healthcare system, currently operates a very similar building on Staten Island. It will be 10 units, 9 studios, 1 bedroom, with an on-site coordinator for social activities and dining and the like. Very little traffic. There will be 10 parking spaces for at such time as there may be family guests. Probably the peak parking would be 5 at any one time. Since we were before you previously, we've met with a couple of times and spoken with the fire captain to work out some of the fire code issues, and I believe planner Margaret has confirmed that we have met and those fire compliance standards. We have also worked with your consultants and have provided them with an updated stormwater plan in which we're going to, in fact, increase and build in new stormwater treatment with a new proposed underground infiltration basin, which doesn't presently exist on the site. We're also going to expand the driveway from 24 feet to 26 feet. We made change in the site plan pursuant to the fire captain's request. I believe there's no variances and that those have been worked out. And we've also added some new signage and some handicap parking. So hopefully we've satisfied your criteria per the chairman's instructions or direction. I won't review each of those standards in sections 12D and 12H. We set forth those in our letter to the board of October 27th and had reviewed them at your November 10th hearing. So at this point, we would hope that you will hold the hearing, close the hearing, and respectfully grant us this approval, so we can then, we'll have to move on to the planning board for site plan review. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation, Councilor. At this time, we usually reserve an opportunity for the board to ask questions, sometimes even make comments. So let me start, Mr. Cahalan. Do you have any questions or comments?
No.
Mr. Miller?
No questions.
Mr. Nerzia?
No.
Mr. DeMarco?
No.
I have nothing further at this time. You addressed some of the concerns that were voiced at the last meeting in your supplemental presentation and today's presentation. So I make a motion to open this matter to the public for a public hearing. Is there a second to my motion?
Second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Mr. Tedisco, is there anyone from the public that is interested in being heard on this application?
If there is anyone interested from the public in being heard, please activate the raise your hand feature. I don't know if I have the ability to.
Oh, hold on. Yeah, sorry. And I can see nobody's raising their hand right now. And Rob, I'm sorry. Hold
okay.
on 1 second. There you go.
Thank you.
Now you can see as well.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I don't see any hands at this time indicating that there's no members of the public wishing to address the board.
Okay, so hearing that there is no one interested in being heard from the public for this public hearing, I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing on this matter. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, back to the board. Mr. Cahalan, do you have anything, questions, comments?
Nothing's changed.
Mr. Miller?
None.
Mr. Nerzia?
No questions, no comments.
Mr. DeMarco?
No.
Okay, and just to reiterate that the presentation along with the supplemental information provided in today's presentation seems to have addressed my concerns as it relates to the test and the special permit. So having said that, I make a motion to adjourn this matter for resolution at the next meeting. Is there a second to my motion?
Second.
Mr. Miller, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Counselor, for your presentation.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good night.
Good night now.
Good night to you. Okay, on to new business. This is number 5 on our calendar, 21-0133 Stewart Place. If the applicant would like to come forward. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was sitting down in the courtroom. You can't come forward. Would the applicant like to present?
Let me see if I have 2 opportunities for that. So let's see. Okay.
While you're doing that, Margaret, I'll just comment to the public that this is an area variance to construct a deck with a side yard setback of 6 feet, where a minimum of 8 feet is required.
You know what? I have promoted the architect, and you know his image is on, or his name is on screen, and he's muted. But I'm not sure whether. What? Maybe here he comes. There you go. Okay.
Hello, everybody. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Rocco DeLeo, architect for the Gleason residence, 33 Stewart Place. The current property is located in an R7.5 residential zoning district. As mentioned in your intro to this application, we are proposing a new deck in the area of where an existing deck lies today. The existing deck, I can show you some general images of this deck, is very small in nature, frankly, relatively not a functional deck other than to access the rear yard. Given that the rear yard is compressed at the moment with the abundance of vegetation and plantings and fencing along the rear of the property, compressing it from what is required in the zone to 25.11 feet to really usable space of about 19.5 feet. The client's desire was really not to give up more rear yard space, particularly in these times when outdoor space is incredibly essential, and wanted to utilize this side yard space.
Rocco, excuse me, Rocco, are you sharing your screen? Because we're not seeing it if you are.
Oh, I thought I was. Let's see. It seems like the share button has disappeared.
Should be at the bottom of your screen.
All I have at the bottom of my screen is the raise hand.
Let me see if you had, let me try one thing here. Rocco DeLeo. I had you on twice. Does that make a difference? So now I have you.
Here we go.
Okay.
Okay.
There you go. Okay.
How about now?
Now we see an email.
Maybe the internet's a little bit slow. You don't see the plans?
No.
See your Outlook.
Okay. Let's do stop sharing.
There you
There
go.
you
How about
go.
now?
Okay.
Yes.
We're good.
Okay. So where I was pointing to before was the line of the existing fence and arborvitae's planting and screening along the rear yard, compressing the actual usable space of the rear yard to about 19.5 feet. And then I was leading to the area of where this deck is being proposed to replace an existing much smaller deck in this general area as well, to an area on the property which is rarely ever used, and frankly doesn't really is really not visible from many aspects of the property or the surrounding properties because of the arborvitae's that are surrounding it as well. The variance that we're seeking is an encroachment into the side yard setback. We understand that the limit is 8 feet as a required side yard setback, although per section 7-D-2 in an R7.5 zone, we are allowed to encroach beyond that side yard setback 4 feet with a deck, but not getting any closer to 6 feet to the property line. And that's exactly what we're proposing here, to extend beyond that 4-foot threshold, but not get any closer to 6 feet to the side yard property line, to give the client and the homeowner a little bit more deck space for her to ultimately place her barbecue grill on this level so that she doesn't have to constantly walk down to a lower level, half a flight of steps to barbecue and entertain and keep going back and forth, because this is the only entrance to the first floor from the rear yard. In terms of height, the new deck would be aligned, the new deck will be set at a finished floor elevation to where the existing deck is. The steps are located exactly where the existing steps are located. So really, the only thing that is changing from what currently exists is the overall width and length, again, to give the homeowner a bit more area, functional area, without having to impede into the rear yard and occupying valuable space to them. I'll turn it over to the board if anyone has any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. At this time, the board generally will either ask questions or have comments, but I would just start by saying that this is one of the more modest requests and applications I've seen in a long time, and the request is quite de minimis as it relates to the setback. But let me start with Mr. Cahalan firstly. Mr. Cahalan?
Yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, that this is a de minimis request compared to other things we'll see tonight.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Cahalan? Anything further?
No
Okay,
questions.
Mr. Miller?
No questions or comments.
Mr. Nerzia?
No questions or comments.
Mr. DeMarco?
Nothing, thanks.
Okay, I have nothing further. I make a motion to open this matter to the public for a public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Tedisco?
Yes,
Counsel?
Mr. Chairman, if there are any members of the public that wish to address the board, please use the raise your hand feature and I'll invite you to unmute yourself. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I don't see any members of the public that wish to address the board.
Okay, I make a motion to close the public hearing on this. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. As parliamentarian, I have to ask, so let's go back to the board. Mr. Cahalan, anything?
No.
Mr. Miller, do you have any questions or comments?
I do not.
Mr. Nerzia?
Nothing.
Mr. DeMarco?
No.
I have nothing. I mean, it's been straightforward, and you've answered the 5-part test. So I make a motion to adjourn this matter for resolution at the next meeting. Is there a second to my motion?
Second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, last matter on our calendar, number 7. This is
And then you're on number 6,
It's number 6.
Oh, I'm sorry.
not the last yet.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I was rushing. I apologize.
Puck
Okay.
hasn't dropped.
I'm sorry?
Puck doesn't drop till tomorrow night.
You're on to me, Mr. Cahalan. Anyway, number 6, 21-02, 32 Lakeshore Drive. And actually, let me introduce this because it's on for an interpretation, but what we frequently do with applications of this nature, because, and as a courtesy to applicants, the applicant tonight is going to present an argument for an interpretation, but also will simultaneously or thereafter present a variance application, so that if the interpretation is, or their argument for the interpretation in their favor is denied, we will have heard the variance application and then we'll have to come back to multiple meetings. So having said that, the applicant may want to proceed at this point.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Happy New Year and healthy to everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfectly well.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Accinelli from Veneruso, Curto, Schwartz and Curto, as attorney for the applicant in connection with this matter. Participating with me this evening is the project engineer, Ralph Mastromonico. Also, the property owner, Mr. Lanza, is also viewing, although he's not an intended participant. As the chairman stated, this application has 2 components. The first involves the applicant's request for an interpretation relative to the basis for the building and planning department's denial, as amended, dated December 21st, 2020, pertaining to the impervious surface calculations pursuant to section 9P of the zoning code of the town of Eastchester. The second aspect, and in the alternative, is a request for an area variance pertaining to impervious surface coverage, where the proposed total impervious surfaces being 10,000, proposed impervious surfaces being 10,595 square feet, which is 2,618 square feet in excess of that which is permitted. The applicant owns the property, which is a single-family dwelling whose rear yard abuts Lake Isle. The property is approximately 41,000 square feet, a portion of which, approximately 13,000 square feet, is considered land underwater, and approximately 28,000 square feet consists of dry area. The applicant proposes to construct a new pool together with related patio area improvements in the backyard, which improvements consist of approximately 2,051 square feet of new impervious surface beyond that which currently exists. In support of the requested relief, I've submitted a memorandum of law as it pertains to the request for an interpretation, and also a statement of principal points in support of the area variance requests. These documents form a part of the record, and unless the board would like, I will not restate them in their entirety this evening. However, by way of brief summary, just like to make a few comments. With respect to the request for an interpretation for the basis of the denial, which is rooted on a policy which is not stated or otherwise set forth in the code, it is the applicant's position that zoning ordinances, which are considered in derogation of the common law right for one to use one's property as he or she wishes, must be strictly construed in favor of the property owner. In addition, any ambiguity in a zoning ordinance must be resolved in favor of the property owner. The zoning ordinances must be given a strict
You don't
construction
have walls behind me. No, it's
and not extended by implication.
The applicant should
With respect to the area variance, the applicant respectfully submits that the benefit to the applicant outweighs any detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the community by such grant when considered under the balancing test and its 5 factors. As I've said, I submitted a detailed statement of principal points to the board together with a memorandum of law, and I'm certainly willing to talk about either of those further if the board would request, unless the board has any questions for me. And also Ralph Mastromonaco is available to go over the plans. He does, Mr. Mastromonaco does have a conflict, so he's kind of bouncing back and forth, and I apologize, with another meeting. So if the board has any questions about the plans, if I can't answer them myself, hopefully Mr. Mastromonaco can chime in.
Can you, I think you're going to need to share your screen so that we can see the plans.
Ralph, are you there? Ralph, you there?
Yeah,
It
I
looks
am
like
here. I'm going to have, for me to share the screen, I'm going to have to switch to my laptop. I'm on my cell phone at the moment, but it'll take me a minute.
I apologize to the board. Sorry for the delay.
Council, no problem.
It'll take a few more minutes. I'm sorry.
Well, you know, I may want to do if this, not may, what we'll do is I will have the board ask any questions of the applicant, of Mr. Accinelli at this time. So, Mr. Kalen, do you have any questions as it relates to the interpretation or the variance application?
Well, I was hoping to talk to the engineer about the
Okay.
application.
So I'll reserve your time. Obviously, you'll have plenty of time to do that. So, Mr. Miller, do you have any questions?
Not
Mr.
at this
Miller?
time.
Not at this time. Mr. Nerzi, any questions?
Actually, same comment. I'm going to reserve until we hear from the engineer.
Okay. Mr. DeMarco?
No questions.
Okay. I just have one. It's really a comment. It's a highlight, actually, or a point to be made that there's already a legal non-conforming impervious surface area of about 8,544 square feet. So you really, your application, although it reads at roughly 1/3, it's less if you count what currently exists, correct?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We'll wait for your, okay.
Let's see.
I think I might need another minute here.
Okay.
I think we see it.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank God.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm
proceed.
Ralph Mastromonaco. I'm an engineer here. Essentially, this is the pool plan. Proposed pavers, proposed pool. There is, if you look at the entire site, this is the property. Runs around here. A bit of it is in the lake. I think we made calculations for everybody to determine how much of that land was underwater, how much was above water. And I don't think it shows on this plan, but there was an inset that we sent to the village, to the town.
It was part of your submission, yes.
Where we would have done some landscaping along the upper portion of this pool. We're proposing a stormwater treatment system for the site, for the impervious areas. That should have been submitted as well. There'll be some drains on the site, on the property. And the actual pool designer is a very interesting pool. It's actually an infinity pool along the edge.
Mhm.
Then below that, there's another sort of a trough where water collects over the top, like a waterfall effect. And we're proposing some walls, and everything is supposed to fit right into the existing patio on the site. And if you want to see the rest of the site, there's a driveway, the house is here, and that's we're proposing some, on this plan that you actually have in front of you, we are proposing some plantings along the lower side, if you're looking at my screen. The equipment for the pool would be inside of a building underneath the pool, so that there'll be the equipment will not be visible. And it would also be, any noise from the equipment would be shielded. Oh, hold on a second. Of course. The pool the equipment from the pool would be shielded to the neighbors. It would be entirely inside of a little building here. Other than that, it's a pool. There are other issues that Steve can discuss, but it's basically a pool.
Okay. Mr. Cahalan, would you like to either question or
Yes.
comment on the architect's
Yes.
application?
I just want to understand, so when I was out at the site, right now the land steps down. It steps down onto that one patio, then it steps down again out to the lake. So this pool and the new area, is that last piece that's going out to the lake that's being used?
Are they on now, me? Are they on this?
I guess my questions don't matter.
I'm sorry to laugh, Mr. Cahalan. Your question does matter.
Well, okay. I'm on another meeting right now.
I know I'm boring.
So I'm going to switch over. Hello? Yeah, do that. Thank you. Thank you.
This is why,
I'm
as soon
sorry.
as the pandemic is over, we will be in person. Proceed. Go ahead, Mr. Cahalan.
I already asked my question.
Hey, Ralph, the question from Board Member Cahalan was, in the rear, some of the board members visited the site or have some familiarity with the site, where the existing stone patio is, and you've got some various step downs from that which is existing to that which is proposed. Can you just explain the areas of the step down from that which is existing, and then also where it is relative to the rear improved portion of the property?
I think you're talking about can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay. Well, those are little short walls, about 1 to 2 feet tall, that steps down from the upper patio through the stairs over here, and then they're just little really garden walls that come down to the grade at 190.
So my question was, on the existing topography of the property, what you're proposing where the pool will go is what is the final step down? Because right now, when you look at the property, it has a green space and then it steps down out to the lake. So the pool is going to reside in that final step down, is what I'm thinking.
Well, the general grade is about 188 on the unimproved portion. The pool deck would be 196 or so.
What about the pool itself?
The pool itself is about 196, elevation 196.
So are you leveling it up to the second level, or are you dropping it down?
Oh, leveling it up.
You're leveling it up.
Yes, it's 198 is the existing level.
Okay, that was my question. Are you stepping down, or are you continuing the same grade?
No, 198 down to 196. The whole plateau would be about 196 grade.
Okay.
And then the unimproved part would be down about 188. So
Okay.
it would be the pool would be elevated, I guess about 8 feet above grade.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm on two different
So-
meetings right now. So.
I see that. So the other thing is the existing fire patio area. You're now putting a new fire pit area according to the plans.
No, I believe that's there.
That's there today. Is that going to be removed?
No.
So you're going to have 2 fire pits?
Well, I don't know if it's going to be removed by the owner. He didn't mention one way or the other. But
Okay, so my question is if the interpretation is not granted, there's a lot of impervious surface on this property. Could you do something to lessen that burden of impervious surface, like planting green space on that old fire pit area, making that, putting some grass back in there or something to reduce the impervious surface?
certainly possible, yes.
Thank you.
Anything further, Mr. Cahalan?
No?
Thank you. Mr. Miller? Mr. Miller?
Sorry, no questions.
Okay. Mr. Nerzia?
Yes, actually, not so much a question about the slope or the height of the walls and all that kind of stuff. But actually, I do want to go back to the interpretation point. So, Mr. Accinelli, just to let you know, generally speaking, my philosophy is that something reads as it reads, not to interpret anything other than what the language states. But given the fact that your interpretation would be factoring in land underwater, it does lead to an odd result. So elaborate on that, on why we should consider an interpretation in your favor.
Well, I think, Mr. Nerzia, the policy that was relied upon by the town is not a written policy. And quite frankly, it's my opinion that it's tantamount to an amendment to the zoning code. The clear and unambiguous language of the code makes no accounting for lands underwater with respect to calculations for impervious surface area. It does so with respect to maximum gross floor area, as an example. And when the code was amended in 2008, if there was a desire or an intention for lands underwater to be excluded from the calculations, I respectfully submit that should have been part of the code as it was amended in 2008 or sometimes since then or even prior. I think that the standard of review and the legal standard as it relates to zoning ordinance is pretty well established. And, as I set forth in my memorandum, I think the situation where you've got a denial based upon something that's other than what you stated in the express language of the code, that's problematic. And that's not something that should be enforced against the property owner under the circumstances. I don't disagree that it could certainly result in varied and even extraordinary situations. I certainly don't dispute that possibility, but I think that under the circumstances, if the impervious surface calculations are something that are going to be or intended to be calculated to the exclusion of lands underwater, I think the town needs to amend its zoning code to make that clear to applicants and their retained professionals and the public, so that when they're looking to make improvements to their properties and they're going forward with their plans, such as my client did, the law under the code is clear and people are put on notice of what the requirements are under the zoning code. That was not the case here. There is no notice regarding the policy, and it wasn't until the applicant received the denial letter did the applicant and the engineer be advised of the existence of this policy of the building department.
Noted. I hear where you're coming from, but is there any point, given that this is probably a case of first impression, is there any point where that position creates a completely crazy result? I mean, is there a bright line between what should be and taking it to the extreme?
No, I don't. Unfortunately, I don't think that the zoning board has the ability or the authority to make determinations as to what's too much or too little. I think, the town has a readily, and I don't know about easily, but certainly a readily available option, and that is to simply amend the zoning code. I don't think it's the zoning board's position or jurisdiction, quite frankly, under the circumstances, to start creating bright lines as to what constitutes too much. I think it's a matter for the town to decide where those lines are and incorporate those lines into the zoning code as it had already done with respect to maximum gross floor area.
Okay, noted. Okay, I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further, Mr. Nerzia?
No,
Mr.
actually, that was it.
DeMarco?
Nothing.
Okay, at this moment, I don't have anything, but I do make a motion to open this matter to the public for a public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Catlin, all in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Tedisco?
Are there any members of the public that wish to address the board on this application? Please use the raise your hand feature, and I'll invite you to unmute yourself. Mr. Chairman, I see no hands indicating no members of the public wish to address the board on
Okay.
this application.
Having heard this from our attorney, I make a motion to close the public hearing on this matter. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. DeMarco, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, back to the board for questions or comments. Mr. Cahalan?
None.
Mr. Miller?
None.
Mr. Nerzia?
No.
Mr. DeMarco?
Nothing.
Okay. I have a question, and it was in conjunction with some commentary from Board Member Cahalan. with respect to the mitigation, and this is, of course, not foreshadowing any ruling I may have, or any vote, I should say, I may have on the interpretation, but is the applicant amenable to mitigating the impervious surface coverage?
I think, Mr. Chairman, I've gone over that with the applicant, and
Okay.
and given the character of the property and the consideration of the location and the caliber of the properties in the area, the applicant wants to maintain a certain level of property caliber, which I think is, respectfully submit, is something that is good for the neighborhood and the character of the neighborhood. I don't think that the current proposal is something that is out of character with that which exists in the neighborhood. What my client is certainly willing to consider is, as it relates to the unimproved areas, to revisit and certainly explore additional plantings, landscaping, things like that, to certainly offset and mitigate and pretty up the rear of the property. That's something that my client is certainly willing to consider.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cahalan, please. Yes.
I mean, this is already a non-conforming that has quite a bit of impervious surface. And, respectfully to the attorney, I disagree. The area that the house is in a beautiful area that has much green space. Many of the properties have much green space in that area. I would, asking for 10,000 of impervious on a property of this size that's already non-conforming. I understand the applicant. I mean, it's a gorgeous home as it is, and they're only going to add to the value, absolutely. And it's definitely within keeping with the character of the neighborhood. But the impervious surface calculation is huge on this thing, whether the interpretation is there or not. So, I would think that they could mitigate, a couple of 100 square feet of something to give back on this application, because they're covering almost every piece of grass except as it goes out to the lake, from what I can see. So, the home is changing the home or adding some green space would be in keeping with the neighborhood, not without keeping in the neighborhood.
Counselor, would you like to reply?
I'm certainly willing to speak to my client about reconsidering mitigation measures that are in keeping with the character of the proposed improvements. I would like to point out, just as a point for the record, that the discussion as it relates to existing non-conforming, I think that conclusion and that interpretation is, again, part of the application for the interpretation, because I think that statement arises and is rooted out of the policy of the building department and its interpretation under the code, because to say that it's currently pre-existing non-conforming,
which it is,
but based on a policy, not language in the code, because that number results from lands underwater.
So if I may, Counselor, what you're saying is that the calculation of the pre-existing nonconformity runs into the same legal issue you're raising as it relates to the interpretation.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
And my commentary earlier was simply that the site conditions reflect a greater impervious surface than the application reflects as per the area variance, not minimizing, but just stating that in actuality, the variation is less than the 32%. I'm not foreshadowing that I'm for the application. What I'm saying to you is that, and the reason why I raised it is that in case the interpretation is not in favor of the applicant, that what you're really talking about here is less than what your application states. And the reason why I asked you that question about mitigation is that the architect raised it. So Mr. Cahalan had a comment and a question, and the architect raised it. And that's why I asked you. I'm not suggesting that it's something you have to do, but if it's something that you're going to consider, then we may want to revisit, we'll be revisiting. The public hearing would have to be opened on any supplement to the application. And then what we could do procedurally is rule on the interpretation at the next meeting. If the applicant is not going to supplement the application, we may very well also rule on the variance application. So I'm going to leave that to the applicant. Counselor, your thoughts on that?
Understood. So and I will go back to my client. So procedurally, if my client is willing to mitigate to some degree, then would it be possible, should that present itself, to make a supplemental submission to the board in advance of the next meeting so that it could be discussed and decided upon at the next meeting as well?
Well, that's a good question. Mrs. Yulee, would we be required to reopen the public hearing? Because actually, this is a diminishment
Correct.
of the
So
application and not an expansion.
I think you could do a couple of things. You could close the public hearing, and then, obviously if you rule in favor of the applicant for an interpretation, the amount of impervious surface is a moot point. If you rule in favor of the building department's interpretation, then the next step is to rule on the area variance. And, some members may think the amount of impervious surface under these circumstances is perfectly appropriate. So you could vote in favor of the area variance as presented. If you felt uncomfortable with it, you could rule in favor of an area variance with a condition that a certain amount of impervious surface be removed. Another option is to ask the applicant to come back with a plan that shows diminished impervious surfaces. I don't know, there may be some members that feel comfortable with it as proposed. So like I said, one option would be to vote on the application itself. One option would be to vote on it, and if you were to approve it with a subject to a condition where you could impose that yourself without even seeing it, or to ask the applicant to come back with an alternative plan.
Margaret, but my concern is that if the public hearing is closed and they're going to come back with an amended submission, shouldn't it be reopened at some point in time?
Well, but so what I had said was if they close the public hearing, they wouldn't be coming back with an amended submission. If you close the public hearing, you could just make a condition of approval that it be minimized to an extent. If you wanted to see something, it would probably be best to keep the public hearing open. I think Alan is correct. You can diminish the variances. You don't want to make them greater. So technically, you probably don't need the public hearing. But if you're going to look at new information, I would keep it open.
Okay.
Now,
So
one thing, Alan.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Yulee, please.
I was just going to say, Ralph, is there a way to kind of zoom out or show the entire property? Because I know Michael Cahalan was talking a lot about the hardscape versus the greenscape, and it's kind of difficult to see in the close-up. So the area that's on the left side of the screen, that's all those pathways are going to be removed or redesigned?
At the moment, no.
Okay, so those paths will remain, and there's grass and landscaping at that portion of the property, correct?
Well, those are gravel walkways.
Yeah, there's not grass there.
Okay, gravel, but then the parts that aren't walkway, I'm assuming that's landscaping or grass.
Yes, it's all grass, yes.
Okay.
Well, then, if I may, let's leave aside the interpretation, which I'm going to make a motion at this time to adjourn that portion of the application for resolution at the next board meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, assuming arguendo that the interpretation of the building department is upheld and the applicant is denied, I'd like to ask the board whether they would, are seeking a supplement to the application as it relates to mitigation. Mr. DeMarco, does that matter to you?
We lost him.
Mark?
He dropped off.
Might be muted.
Okay,
Right.
so, you know what, I'll start on the left side of the, when we're
Mark.
Mr. Cahalan? Would you want to see a
If they're
mitigation?
going to reduce it, I mean, I would be interested in seeing what they're going to do, but, you know.
Well, if I may interrupt you, the reason why and I'm sorry to ambush the board with this question, the reason why I'm saying this is because what I don't want to do in a circumstance like this is impose a condition, which is, I guess, my interpretation of what should be lopped off when it may not make sense. Like, for instance, the architect made a comment as it relates to the second fire pit, and I got the impression that maybe that was an area. I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, I don't see it as a necessity, but I'm one voting board member, and my concern is that I want to give the applicant an opportunity to amend if that means it's something that board members want to see. So I've voiced what I need or do not need to see or hear. So Mr. Cahalan has said what he wanted to see or hear. So Mr. Miller, do you want to see a supplement to this, or you're comfortable with the application as it reads?
I'm comfortable as it reads.
Okay, Mr. Nerzia?
Actually, I think that's a good idea. I think a supplement would be helpful to view all potential options in moving forward.
Mr. DeMarco?
Oops, you're muted.
What was the question now? And I'm sorry.
Okay.
I dropped, I lost connection for a minute.
Okay, so what, I'm not sure if you voted then, so let me get, because again, we're in 21st century land, which is, once the pandemic is over, this is over. We will never be doing this again. So anyway, what we did was I made a motion which was seconded, and I think it either had 4 or 5 votes, that the interpretation portion of the application will be decided upon, will be resolved in the next meeting. Did you vote yes as well on that?
Yes.
Okay. And then the board has weighed in on whether they have any interest in seeing the applicant provide supplemental, a supplement to the application to mitigate the impervious surface coverage. And various board members said yes, and various board members said no. So in terms of interest, what is your interest level on getting a supplement?
I'm interested.
Okay, so it sounds like it's either 3, 2, 4, 1 looking for a supplement. So Counselor, what I would suggest is, since this is going to be a diminishment or a reduction in the application, there won't be any further hearing from the public on this. Mrs. Yulee, do you agree with me or disagree with me?
Well, if you're going to have them come back, I would just keep it open. But
Well, it's not, I closed it.
oh, you closed the public. I thought you just closed it on the interpretation.
Actually, I moved to
But
have
in
a
any case,
resolution.
that's fine. You're right. As long as they're diminishing the extent of the variance, and there has not been anyone attending this particular public hearing, I think that's
Exactly.
fine.
Okay, so then what Counselor, what I think we're going to cull together here is that if the applicant has any interest in supplementing to diminish the impervious coverage in any way, however small it is, we would request that you do that in advance of the meeting. And then if you say that is acceptable, then I'm going to make a motion to put this over for resolution. But you've heard what the board thought. You hear my, I guess, suggestion. What is your thoughts on this?
No, I have no problem with that, Mr. Chairman. I can certainly speak to my client, and I can get, either in writing either a formal notification to the town or to the board that the applicant is not going to supplement, or yes, we will mitigate and see the attached revised plans. I can certainly do that sooner rather than later after speaking with my client and the architect, the engineer, excuse me.
Counsel, that is very concise. That's exactly the way to do it. And then hearing that we're all on the same page, so to speak, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn this matter for resolution at the next meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Counsel, for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Have a good evening.
You too.
Two.
Okay, now the last item on the calendar, number 7. This is 21-03, 48 Harney Road. And while the applicant is setting up, this is a application for an area variance to legalize an above-ground pool and deck. Above-ground pool being as-built, deck being partially as-built pursuant to a stop work order. Proceed.
You're on mute.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Happy New Year. David Barbuti, representing Mr. and Mrs. Rodolfo, here tonight for legalization of a 10 by 18 above ground swimming pool with a wood deck surround. The property contains a one-family dwelling, 1.5 stories. And this all came about basically during late spring, early summer. At the beginning of COVID, the applicants, they saw that they weren't going to be able to go on vacation. And they had mistakenly didn't realize that permits were so they purchased it, it was installed, and unfortunately, building, well, not unfortunately, but the building inspector stopped by, issued a violation, then they contacted me to try to rectify the problems. At that point, we found out that they were too close to property lines and needed the 3 variances that we are requesting tonight.
David, can you share your screen?
Sure, certainly.
And also, David, does your client want to be available to speak as well, or just watch?
I think they were just going to watch, but I
Okay.
So this isn't doing it for me.
Yeah, we can see those plan now.
You can?
Yes.
I can't, but okay, no problem. Okay. That's a problem. I can't see it. Okay. So, as you can see in the back of the property, the above ground pool, which is basically adjacent to the small shed in the back. The property is an existing grass area. I don't understand what just happened here.
Have we lost the applicant, Mrs. Yuli?
Mute again.
No, I think he just muted himself for a minute while he's figuring some things out.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how do I get, I see everybody, all the people on the screen, but I do not see my screen share. Okay. Can you see my cursor?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. All right. Okay, so it might be better if I started with the survey. So here's the existing survey, existing parcel. There's an existing patio that's in the rear, and this is a raised grass area adjacent to the shed. Area in question is back here where it says lot 31 and 32. So there's an existing stone retaining wall here. The patio is over here. Basically what they had done was they had dug out the soils at this area to drop pool, because the property slopes up towards the back, towards this rear stockade fence. Basically a gradual incline. They do have photos as well of what this looks like. So here is a Google Earth from above. So basically you can get an idea. There's a one-story addition. There's the gravel patio area. Back here is where the pool is. So as you can see, it's recessed into the ground. That's a better shot. So basically the wall, the existing retaining wall is approximately 2 feet tall. So they dug out about 2 feet of soil, put some railroad ties up around to support that as a retaining wall. And they had began to construct a wood deck around it. That's looking west to east. So deck in the back is roughly 4.5 to 5 feet. That right there is the stockade fence. The deck itself, so the pool itself requires a 10-foot setback to the side and rear property lines. And as constructed, it is 4.9 feet. So that's a deficiency of 5.1 feet or a 51% variance. The side yard setback to an accessory structure, which is considered the deck, has a minimum of 5 foot, and the proposed is 3'6", which is on this westerly side, which is a deficiency of about 1.4 feet or 28%. The largest variance tonight is the rear yard setback, which is along the existing stockade fence. That also was proposed to be 5 feet, and at the closest point is 0.4 feet, and we're approximately 1 feet on the easterly side. So the 0.04 foot on the right side is a deficiency of 4.6 feet or 92% variance. That's along this back corner. So if the board has any questions, I'm free to answer.
Sure. Thank you for your presentation. And at this time, I do open it to the board for questions or comments. Mr. Cahalan, you're first.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough application in the sense that I understand why the applicant put the pool in because of the pandemic, but when I was at the site last week, I mean, it's tight back there. There's these things, there's no room back there. And it's a 92% variance is not, you know, I know it's only 1/4, but when you go back and look at what's going on, it's tough. This is the, you know, true adage of, 10 pounds of dirt in a 5-pound bag. I just think that there's so much going on back there to put this structure in there, and I understand why. It's just, it doesn't work on a bunch of different levels. Safety concerns and everything else aside, I'll be honest, I have a problem with the application.
Thank you, Mr. Cahalan. Mr. Miller?
No, I have no questions or comments this time.
Mr. Nersia?
No questions.
Mr. DeMarco?
No questions.
Okay. I don't have anything at this time. I make a motion to open this matter to the public for a public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Tedisco, do your thing.
Mr. Chairman, looking at the members of the public attending the meeting, if anyone wishes to address the board on this application, please use the raise your hand feature. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I don't see anyone indicating they wish to address the board on the application.
Okay. Having heard that, I make a motion to close the public hearing on this matter. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, well, we'll go through the board, but I just, one comment.
Mr. Chairman, as you closed the public hearing, a hand did go up. I don't know if you want to address that.
That's actually the
Yes.
applicant.
Okay,
So that's the applicant.
okay.
Okay, so then, so does the applicant want to be heard on this? Even though the public hearing's been closed, the applicant can supplement or comment on its application before we go back to a round with the board. Would the applicant like to be heard on this?
I'm going to invite the applicant to unmute herself. And please unmute yourself and address the board. Just give your name and address before your comments.
Can you see me? Oh, hey.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Lucy Rodolfo, 48 Harney Road, Scarsdale, 10583. I am the applicant. My husband and I and my son and my mom live here. And my grandchildren who come often. I just hope that you have an open mind and approve this application. It's a tiny pool. It's a pretty big yard. It does have a patio, and I understand the concern of the building inspector saying it's tight, but it's a tiny pool. I mean, people have, I'm not asking for an in-ground pool. We have locks on the gates. We have fences all around. We'll have an alarm with the pool. I don't see any, the only thing that I wanted to speak about was, he said it was a safety issue. There will absolutely be no safety issues. I have 2 small grandchildren who will be enjoying the pool, and there will be absolutely every precaution taken that this will be a safe pool. So I'm hoping that you guys approve the plan. It's not a big project. It's a tiny pool with a small deck around it. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay,
Have a
thank
good
you.
evening.
Okay, thank you. So before I go back to the board, just as I guess a point of, it's not a point of order, but I guess my commentary is that side, front, and rear yard setbacks are there for a reason. And they're essentially buffer zones. And when structures are built on a lot line without approval, what you're doing is you're pushing the buffer zone to the neighboring properties beyond their buffer zone if they want to have what was intended by the law. Now, you have every right to ask for relief from that law. But my commentary is very simple, and that is that there's a 5-part test, and several of those prongs in that test include self-determination, the character of the neighborhood, and detriment to other properties. So as far as I'm concerned, I have your submission, and I've read it thoroughly, and I've listened to your presentation. Let's see what the board has to say with any questions or comments. Mr. Cahalan, anything?
I've said my comments.
Okay. Mr. Miller, anything?
No, no comments.
Mr. Nerzia?
None.
Mr. DeMarco?
Nothing.
I have nothing further. I make a motion to adjourn this matter for resolution at the next meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, before we adjourn for our next meeting, let me just, our next meeting is February 9th, I believe. Let me just make sure. Yes. So sometimes when I adjourn, I don't let people know when the next meeting is. It's on our master calendar, and it's a public record. So having said that, I make a motion to adjourn meeting today. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Yuli.